Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first, we'd like to thank you all for being here on this special occasion. Today's conference is entitled A Project on the Reform of the Education of Muslim Minority Children in Western Thrace. We are all looking forward to the inspiring speeches that have been scheduled for today. Let me inform you about today's schedule. First, Professor Dr. Güzver Yildiran, the Dean of the Faculty of Education of Boğaziçi University, will deliver the opening speech, followed by Professor Talia Dragonas and Professor Anya Frangadoki from the University of Athens, who will present the project. Afterwards, we'll watch a documentary related to the project. And later, we'll have a 10-minute coffee break back in the back of the room. And following the question and answer session, the program will end. And now, I'd like to give the floor to our Faculty of Education, to our Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Dr. Güzver Yildiran, to deliver her opening remarks and a welcome address.
Our Provost, Professor Ali Tekcan, members of the Diplomatic Corps of Greece, our colleagues, members of the press, and students. I would like to welcome you today to an interesting conference within the celebrations of the sesquicentennial anniversary, that means 150th anniversary, as we learned from our rector, of Boğaziçi University. This conference, to which I hoped more people would have attended, but May, as I said, is not a good month. We have our students preparing for the finals and our faculty wrapping up the situation, so I hope that we will be able to share what goes on in this conference through our videos and through the internet, so that more people will be able to access to these. The project today to be presented is called A Project on the Reform of the Education of Muslim Minority Children in Western Thrace, Greece. Our presenters are two academicians who had a long period of interaction with our university since 1994. From the University of Athens, Professor Talia Dragonas and Professor Anna Frangadoki. Now, their interaction, as I said to you, have been over the years, since 1994. And through this interaction, 3 books have been published by them and members of our faculties. This series is called The Social and Historical Studies in Greece and Turkey. And the first book came out, I'm told, in 2003, called Citizenship and the Nation State in Greece and Turkey, written by Professor Faruk Birtek, our sociology professor emeritus, and Professor Talia Dragonas of the University of Athens. The next book, Ways to Modernity in Greece and Turkey, Encounters with Europe from 1850 to 1950, was written by Anna Frangadoki and Çağlar Keyder of our university. The third book, Spatial Conceptions of the Nation. I think this is so interesting. Spatial, not special, Spatial Conceptions of the Nation, Modernizing Geographies, by Nikiforos Diamandouros, Talia Dragonas, and Çağlar Keyder. So we have these outputs. I don't have a single one of them. They promised to send me the set. Are very interesting indeed and show a number of years of collaboration with our university. Now, let me share with you a little bit about how this conference came to be. My dear friend and colleague, Professor Faruk Birtek, called me in March and asked me if the Faculty of Education would be interested in a conference by Professor Dragonas on an integration project of Turkish children living in Western Thrace. Apparently, Professor Droganas had contacted Faruk Birtek on the topic, and as you know, they had written a book together, so their friendship goes back a few years. And they had written to our office, however, the electronic mail was mislaid. So after Faruk called me, I contacted Professor Droganas myself, and we have been corresponding ever since, almost daily, to organize this event. The topic of the conference is indeed very, very interesting, and there was immediately some calls from the Public Relations Office, the member of whom is here somewhere in the room, and the press. Let me now introduce you the project as they have written in their abstract, and so that you get an idea of what the whole 15-year-old intervention entails. It's a comprehensive intervention inside and outside the classroom, say the project directors and authors, which comprises of the teaching and learning of Greek as a second language, the development of multiple educational materials, teacher training, and extensive work with the Muslim minority community. Important qualitative and quantitative changes were brought about by the project in 15 years. And what makes this project unique, tell us the directors of the project, are three things. One, the duration of the educational reform, they call it, from 1997 to 2013. Secondly, the broad spectrum it covers, ranging from classroom materials to the involvement of the community, from the micro to the macro involvement of the community. And three, its interdisciplinary nature. Sociologists, psychologists work together with educators. The 15-year intervention can be situated in what kind of research? Action research, they say, the aim of which is to challenge discrimination, bridge research and activism, research on the shelves of libraries or on the disks in our computers does not reach communities. This research does. Bridge research and activism in the field of educational policy and pedagogy, and ultimately achieve social change. Drawing on this tradition, the aim was to investigate the connection between theory and practice, expand participation and collaboration, and identify ways to challenge unequal power relations. Keywords here. Overall, the entire intervention, say the directors, was geared towards reconciling unity with diversity, cultivating inclusion without being assimilationist, promoting a common sense of belonging while respecting legitimate cultural differences and valuing plural identities in diverse cultures. Hence, the logo of the project, they say, is addition, not subtraction, multiplication, not division. We are thus very eager to hear about the project and see the documentary which will follow. One of the more sensitive social psychologists to cultural differences, John Barry from Canada, has developed a convenient two-dimensional model. You can go to the first, yeah, thank you. A two-dimensional model, which is quite powerful in explaining the possible relationships between the dominant culture and its non-dominant subcultures. The first dimension, up above, you see it on the horizontal line, is preference to maintain one's cultural heritage and identity, where individuals on the one hand of the dimension immerse themselves in their own cultural heritage, while at the other end of the dimension, on the minus end, they may reject or be forced to alienate themselves from all elements of their culture. So, on the one hand, an immersion within their own culture at one end of the dimension, at the other end of the dimension, an alienation towards one's cultural heritage due to various different reasons. Let me see. Okay, here's the immersion in one's culture and alienation, shedding off of one's culture. That's one dimension. Okay, the second dimension is related to having contact with and participating in the larger society on the one end of the dimension and separating from the dominant culture at the other. Note that here is participation being part of the more dominant culture, and here is having nothing to do with the dominant culture itself. It is a very useful kind of a model. Let's look at the subgroups and individuals and what happens to them. Assimilation strategy is operant when individuals do not wish to maintain their own cultural identity and seek contact with the dominant culture, accepting its mode de vie. Separation operates when individuals place a value on holding on to their original culture and avoid interaction with the dominant culture, its operations, values, and mode de vie, usually due to prejudice and discrimination. The former South African society was such a separationist state. When there is little possibility or interest in maintaining one's cultural heritage, which is usually an outcome of the demands of the dominant culture, and there is little possibility in becoming part of the dominant culture because of prejudice and discrimination, the individual is marginalized. When there is interest in maintaining one's original cultural heritage, as well as an interest in interacting with the dominant culture and its mode de vie, integration becomes possible. Okay, do we see all of these? This project is very much related to one side of the paradigm, and so we thought it would be important for you to see this. Integration containing elements of both one's heritage and the dominant culture. Assimilation, shedding off one's subculture and its cultural elements and being part of the dominant culture only. Separation, when you retain your own cultural heritage but have no capacity or ability or are discriminated against, thus you are not part of the dominant culture. And marginalization, probably the worst of all, non-identification with one's own culture and being not allowed to enter into the dominant culture. Now, this is at the subgroup level or at the individual level. This is at the larger society level. Integration orientations are part of multiculturalism at the societal level, where diversity is integrated, as well as being allowed to partake fully in the rights and privileges of the dominant culture. This is multiculturalism. Melting pot, a good example, is the United States of America. You shed elements of your own culture and become part of the dominant culture. Segregation, as I said, the former South African societies, where one is not allowed to enter the dominant culture, but is allowed to identify with parts of their own culture. And exclusion, being not allowed because of prejudice and discrimination into not your own cultural elements or heritage, as well as not being part of the dominant culture. Yeah. As societies become more complex, including subcultures with diverse value schemes, life views and orientations, it is our hope as social scientists, their hope and my hope from two different cultures, that the organization of institutions in each society will facilitate human relations aligned with the concept of choice and human dignity through integrationist policies. Allow me now to introduce Professors Talia Dragonas and Anna Frangutaki, who will present this project with their illustrious past. I'm only able to give a brief note about each of their contributions. Talia Dragonas is a professor of social psychology at the University of Athens, as I said before. She has been a member of the board of the Greek Open University and the Center of Educational Research. Her research activity lies in the area of identities and the articulation of the social with the psychological. She has participated in and directed many Greek and international projects and has worked extensively for the educational reform of the Muslim minority in Western Thrace, a project she will be talking about today with Professor Varangoudaki. Specific areas of her research interests are psychosocial identity and intergroup relations, intercultural education and ethnocentrism in the educational system, prevention and promotion of early psychosocial health, transition to parenthood, primarily fatherhood and masculinity, as well as research on methodological issues related to qualitative and quantitative research. And we shared our views together this morning, the three of us, saying that young researchers should know the quantitative very well before they go on to the qualitative. She has been a member of the parliament with the PASOK Socialist Party between the years of 2007 and 2009, and participated in parliamentary committees on education, culture, equality, and human rights. She was a special secretary on intercultural education at the Greek Ministry of Education, responsible for populations such as migrants, the Muslim minority, and Romans. Now, coming to my colleague Anna Varangoudaki, she is a sociologist of education. She's an emerita professor of the University of Athens. She has directed research on social inequalities in education, analysis of school textbooks, ethnocentrism and racism in education. Her main publications are on the analysis of school textbooks on social discrimination, social inequality, and ethnic discrimination in education, the history of ideas on the fundamental human right to education, an interest that we both share, and ethnocentrism in education. She has been writing for years a column in the Greek center-left afternoon paper called Tanea. Her latest book in print is entitled Nationalism and the Rise of the Extreme Right. She has worked for the educational reform of the Muslim minority in Western Thrace since 1996, a project she will present today with Talia Dragonas. I now leave the floors to our distinguished scholars for you to share their ideas. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Let me first say some words for thanking the Dean of the Department of Education, Professor Güzver Yildiran, who invited us here. We are honored by this invitation, and we are very happy to be back to this university because we have old friends here. So thank you very much for this opportunity to come back to beautiful Istanbul and talk to you about this project. The documentary you will be watching depicts a 15-year intervention for the improvement of the education of the Muslim minority children living in the Greek province of Thrace. For a number of historical and socio-political reasons, Muslim minority children have suffered from poor education for many decades. At the onset of this intervention, that is in 1997, it was common knowledge that a large number of these children were coming out of primary school illiterate in Greek and functionally illiterate in Turkish.
Just a sec. How do I move up and down? Here. Okay. Sorry.
Okay?
Yes.
The dropout rate from the 9-year compulsory school was huge for these children. It was 65%, whereas the national mean at the time was only 7%. The fate of the non-exchange minorities, the Muslims of Greeks and in Greece, and the Greek Orthodox, the Rooms in Istanbul, this fate has been sealed by the historical difficulties of our two countries. Both minorities have been exposed to considerable hardships, such as restrictive and discriminatory policies, coercive emigration, and even large-scale deportation, as was the case with the Rum minority in Istanbul. Also, reciprocal maltreatment began as soon as legal protection was set up. Fortunately, in the early 90s, marked in Greece an important period as regards new social policies concerning the Muslim minority. The new policy agenda included the respect of human rights, political equality and substantial legal equality, as well as the implementation of educational policies against social exclusion. In the educational sphere, an important affirmative action measure was taken in 1996, allowing since a minority quota to enroll in Greek universities through easier examinations, thus setting in motion a readjustment and absorption of inequalities in the fields of language and social participation. 10 years later, another measure was introduced, the pilot instruction of the Turkish language in mainstream state secondary schools. The project we are presenting today is situated in these policies against social exclusion. The project was initiated by the Greek Ministry of Education, and it is mainly funded by the European Social Fund. What makes it particularly noteworthy are its duration. It goes on for 15 years now, since 1997. Also, the broad spectrum it covers, ranging from the development of educational materials to the involvement of the community, and last, its interdisciplinary nature. The different aspects of the project, as we will see, are the development of textbooks and various electronic educational materials. They are all based on the teaching of Greek as a second language. Also in-service teacher training, compensatory classes for students, and last, the opening up to the community through the creation of 10 community centers, you will see them, and 4 mobile units operating 7 days a week and 11.5 months a year. Also, as expected, a number of quantitative and qualitative studies have taken place. Please note that what you are going to see in the film, all these activities are not part of the formal educational system. The project is a parallel educational intervention next to the formal school, either minority or mainstream state school. This intervention is situated in the tradition of action research. It aims to challenge discrimination, bridge research and activism in the field of educational policy and pedagogy, and ultimately achieve social change, which is very difficult because it supposes change in the minds of the people. Drawing on this tradition that extends its focus beyond academia, we sought to investigate the connection between theory and practice, also expand participation and collaboration, and identify ways to challenge unequal power relations.
So before I go on, can I also please thank Professor Yildiran and thank everybody who's here. I feel very moved to be back in this exact room. We gave a paper 15 years ago or more, maybe 18 years ago. At that time, we were working on ethnocentrism in the educational system. So a big group of our team was invited by the then professor who has now moved to another university, Professor Khalil Berktay. So it's very moving to be back in the same room and in the same university. So education obviously is the most important starting point for fighting the social exclusion of the Muslim minority that it has experienced. It is important that we describe the way the cultural diversity of the Muslim minority is managed by the Greek state. We just saw a typology, John Barry's typology. I'm going to use a similar typology. It's mostly drawing on political science terms, but it's very similar. So in political science terms, questions of ethnicity and minority rights in the Western world have been addressed on what has come to be referred as the liberal communitarian divide. In ideal type terms, on the one side of the divide, there are those who prioritize equality of all individuals before law and claim that the role of the state is to ensure that every citizen is treated in an equal manner and every member of the society has the same rights and responsibilities. In this context, they argue against the recognition of ethnic identities in the public sphere. Rather, one's ethnic, cultural, religious, or racial identities are understood as a private matter that can be exercised individually. On the other side of the divide, there are those who postulate that the broader communal socialization in a historically rooted culture is necessary to enable a minority's civil rights and fragile presence in the public political arena. In other words, it is the institutionalization of collective rights that can guarantee that minority members are treated fairly and that they are protected from the oppression of the majority. It's a very similar typology, the integration and the marginalization you saw before. Now the question is, where does the management of cultural diversity of the Muslim minority in Thrace, in terms of the liberal communitarian debate, stands? Obviously, while there are ideal types, and the purity of the two approaches is often not retained completely in practice, the accommodation of the minority's cultural rights clearly does not fall under the liberal model. Obviously, we know that there is protection of rights there. At the same time, it's not the case of the implementation of a communitarian approach either, whereby the state accommodates diversity by giving effective control to the minority over certain political and cultural affairs. It would seem like it is a communitarian model, but it's not, and I will show you why. It is the International Treaty of Lausanne that constitutes the basic charter that gave the Muslim minority in Thrace the right to freely practice their own religion and to establish, manage, and control schools at their own expense, where they could use their own language and teach the Quran. The respect of these cultural rights is neither the product of demands made by the minority on the state, nor the outcome of the Greek state's active policy, as it would have been, for example, in Canada. The communitarian model is something which is a model that the way cultural diversity is being managed by the state. There, it is the minority itself that makes these demands, and then the state sort of consults and decides. Here, it's something that has been handed over by the Lausanne Treaty. The protection of the minority's cultural identity is neither a remnant of its traditional status of minorities in the Ottoman Empire. In the Ottoman Empire, the legal and the social mechanisms contributed towards keeping the different millets apart and not integrating them. There were different millets based on religion. But by promoting minority protection in Greece and Turkey, the Lausanne Treaty did not aim to perpetuate minority members' separate status, neither in Turkey nor in Greece. It rather aimed to integrate them within their host countries in order to secure international stability. So none of these two models really operate in Thrace. It's an in-between situation. It is apparently a communitarian, but it's not, because it's not something that the population has strived or the entire community, the entire state has decided to lead with the interests of that minority on the basis of a communitarian divide. So this really makes the situation quite complex, because we don't really know exactly where this minority stands, right? Limited access to education has led the minority to social and psychological deprivation, and hence to inability to impact on social processes and build autonomy and self-determination. It has also created feelings of incompetence and powerlessness. As regards the literacy of minority groups, such as the Muslim minority of Thrace, Wagner is a researcher in Canada, provides a very interesting analysis. He discusses two different types of what he calls subordinated group illiteracy. The one is the illiteracy of oppression, and the other is illiteracy of resistance. They both derive from obstacles to access to appropriate schooling. Literacy of oppression is imposed by the majority societies, and their intention is to assimilate diversity, as on the model, on John Berry's model that you presented before. It results in the slow destruction of identity and breeds mechanisms of resistance on the part of minority communities. Illiteracy of resistance, on the other hand, although caused by oppression, is to some extent imposed by minority groups themselves. By wishing to safeguard their language and culture and fearing assimilation, minorities turn against themselves and reject the form of education imposed by the majority group. In extreme cases, says Wagner, minorities may prefer to remain illiterate rather than risk becoming assimilated and losing their language and culture. Wagner's analysis reflects in the most accurate way the conflicting perspectives held by the Muslim minority in Thrace as regards its education. To redress this lose-lose situation, because this is a lose-lose situation, you either remain illiterate because you're oppressed, or you either remain illiterate because you're resisting education. So to redress this lose-lose situation, our intervention was informed by the concept of empowerment. We understand empowerment as the social process that takes place within and between individuals, and as the outcome measured against expected accomplishments. Empowerment involves both minority and majority. It would be a fallacy to think that you can empower a minority and forget about the majority, or that you can empower the majority and forget about the minority. It's a coin with both sides. It entails dissociating from the notion of zero-sum dynamics, where a win-lose mentality prevails. In our project, empowerment took the form of the willingness of each member to contribute collectively towards a common goal, develop relationships to promote mutual respect, enhance communication and collaboration to achieve common objectives, invest in decision-making and sharing a sense of responsibility for individual and collective outcomes. In the area of pedagogy in particular, it was Jim Cummins' definition of empowerment that influenced us the most. Cummins embeds empowerment in the process of negotiating identities in the classroom and the establishment of collaborative relations of power that enable students to achieve more. Students belonging to subordinated groups, according to Cummins, will succeed academically to the extent that the patterns of interaction in the school challenge and reverse those that prevail in the society at large. Overall, the intervention was geared towards reconciling, as I think Professor Gildiran said in a capsule in her introduction, aims at reconciling unity with diversity, cultivating inclusion without being assimilationist, promoting a common sense of belonging while respecting legitimate cultural differences and valuing plural identities without undermining shared citizenship. And again, as Professor Gildiran said, hence the logo of the project, addition, not subtraction, multiplication, not division. I would like to give you some quantitative changes which are really based on the notion of empowerment as measurable outcomes. Since the inception of the educational reform project, that is 1997, impressive changes regarding empowerment as measurable outcome have occurred. More specifically, dropout rates from compulsory education decreased from 65% in 2000, the year 2000, as Anna said before, to less than 30% in 2012. In addition, from 1997 to 2010, pupil enrollment in lower and upper secondary compulsory education has surged from 163% and has surged by 163% and 402% respectively. You can see there the figures in 1997, 1,500 students in lower secondary, 3,950 in 2010. 547 students in higher secondary, this is the last 3 years of secondary education, 2,750 in 2010. And these figures have moved up a little bit more. Now it's 213, so there are, 2013, so there are some, they've moved upwards a bit. Figures have changed dramatically, particularly for girls, who as a rule were withdrawn from school by the end of primary school. Girls' attendance has increased by 147% and 143% in lower secondary and upper secondary, respectively. Here again, you see the numbers, and you see in the national mean, it's 53.5%, it's for girls, and in our case, in 2010, it's 49%. So we are getting close to the national mean. And this is extremely important for the girls, because girls were taken out of school when they were 12. They didn't complete the 9-year compulsory school, and this is really an immense change. Finally, significant changes have also occurred in tertiary education, owing mainly to the positive discrimination measure regarding university entrance exams mentioned by Anna in the beginning. So in 1997, only 68 students from the Muslim minority attended Greek universities, while in 2011, this has gone up to 482 students who were enrolled in tertiary education in equal numbers as far as gender is concerned. This signifies a 608% increase. Although the impact of these changes in reversing minority children's underachievement has been tremendous, it is widely acknowledged that minority children are still lagging behind academically compared to their majority peers. This gap is reflected in dropout rates from the 9-year compulsory education, which are still almost 5 times higher for minority children compared to the national mean. Now, this is our website. Qualitative changes which really mean empowerment as a process. While measured outcomes are quantifiable, the examination of the process of empowerment has yielded in-depth qualitative insights. This intervention is bringing to fore important identity issues. It suggests an understanding of knowledge embedded within communal relationships. It professes a move away from authoritative monologic to dialogic practices of meaning-making in the educational setting. And it aims at raising awareness of the historical, social, and political conditions within which the education of the Muslim minority is situated. We will not be discussing these changes because you will see them on the documentary. We don't want to give you any more information on that because they're obvious and visual image is always much more interesting. I just want to make a final point that this has been a very difficult enterprise. It has been an arduous process. This is not part of the documentary. This process, the difficult part is not part of the documentary. We wanted to highlight the bright side, but we'll just give you a few words on what was the difficult process. When the project began in 1997, the presence of the team members in the field triggered mixed emotions. Suspicion from the Greek authorities, anger, hostility, and ambivalence at best on the part of the nationalists of the majority population, hesitation and timid hope in the minority, caution among its leaders. For the first 2 or 3 years, the members of the minority were difficult to approach. Contacts had to be made through their official representatives, such as teachers' unions and minority leaders. Parents were reserved, mothers even more so. They would come at school. Τι είναι αυτό, πως έχεις κανένα κινητό ανοιχτό. Maybe we should close that. Κανένα κινητό ανοιχτό, πως έχεις. Κανένα κινητό ανοιχτό. Κλείστο. It's okay. Mothers would come, they would come to the school, the official school, they would come, they would leave their children and they would sort of turn their head away and they would go. I mean, they were, mostly fathers were the ones that were involved in some kind of exchange with teachers, but mothers were completely, they would look at the other side. These early reactions on the minority members' part were related to the fact that we were perceived as outsiders, identified with state powers that had traditionally marginalized and excluded the minority from decision-making. Minority papers questioned whether the education reform represented a wolf in a sheep's clothing, that's how we were called. And there was widespread suspicion of a hidden assimilationist agenda. Establishing a relationship of trust between minority and team members was a long process. It was based on the premise that the battle to reverse the structural inequalities and school failure of minority children was of a sociopolitical nature that concerned all citizens, that concerned everyone. The establishment of a relationship of trust can be manifested in minority parents' presence in the community centers, particularly that of mothers. As a result, mothers gradually started asking for Greek language classes for themselves to be able to support their children's Greek language learning. It was clear, however, that learning Greek allowed them to claim a voice in the majority society. A relationship of trust took equally long to develop with the majority, despite the fact that the educational reform was and still is the official policy of the Greek Ministry of Education. With few exceptions. Initially, the Greek local media represented the project in a negative way. We were sort of called pawns of Turkey's foreign policy. We were called politically naive academics intruding in the local affairs. Nowadays, this negative climate has been reversed. Most local media, newspapers, and TV channels follow up on our press releases, highlight the achievements accomplished, and they present a very, very positive image of what's happening in that geographical area. Everybody feels that they're benefiting something. Resistance to the educational reform was particularly true for the majority teachers who participated in the teacher training workshops. Teachers held strong views that their students could not achieve at high levels, their educational and social backgrounds riddled with deficiencies. These views were gradually revised as a number of teachers refocused on the strengths of their students, they engaged in self-reflection and the transformation of their own teaching practices, and they became aware of the sociopolitical dimensions of learning. It's worth noting that when one majority or minority group became more accepting of change, the other withdrew its support. So it was a saw, you know. You would gain one group, then you would lose the other one. Immediately when you win the other one, then you would lose the other one. These reactions illustrate that the development of enduring collaborative practices between majority and minority groups are still at early stages. These are contention that minority hardliners will keep promoting Wagner's notion of illiteracy of resistance, while majority hardliners will keep using and abusing patriotic rhetoric, demanding for a policy of negative reciprocity. Nevertheless, we're convinced that as long as education continues to empower students and teachers, the new generation will be increasingly more capable of negotiating conflicts, inventing successful compromises, and building what might call bridges over troubled waters. While the healing of deep-rooted history of opposition and oppression is not an easy task, through personal and collective empowerment, binary oppositions such as Christian and Muslim, Greek and Turk, us and them, will become less prominent, and other identity aspects associated with gender, cultural and political affiliation, social class, educational and professional trajectories will be brought to the fore. We let you watch the documentary, and we would be very interested to discuss it with you later.
So maybe we have your questions, please, if you have any. Yes.
Thank you for the documentary. Welcome to Istanbul. I have been in Western Thracia several times. I visited some villages. I have attended some programs there. I saw some problems about the issue. There are some minority schools, but they are not satisfied with the number of these schools yet, because, for example, in Rodopi, the half of the population are minority. More than half. And 20 state and secondary schools and 1 minority school there. According to the Lausanne Peace Treaty, the minority shall have also religion education, the right of religion education, and also the language education. But this unbalanced school numbers are not, they are not satisfied this issue. And also in Khanty, nearly 40% of the population are Turkish Muslims, 34 state secondary high school, and one minority school. So all in all, I know this issue, this kindergarten issue. There are two kindergartens of Greek Orthodox minorities in Istanbul, but at Trace, the minority, this new, I respect your works, but about Turkish language education, the Greek government is not working well, I think. I want to ask that why this program is just applied about Greek language, why there isn't a Turkish language, and also in your documentary, you always talking about that Orthodox Greek minority in Turkey and Muslim minority in Greek. This is not Muslim minority. This is Muslim Turk minority in Greek. There is the other Muslims are very less.
Sorry?
The other Muslims are very less. You are in documentary. You are saying that there are Orthodox Greek minority in Istanbul and Muslim minority in Western Thrace. No, Muslim and Turk. It is.
Okay, let me paraphrase from what I understand from your question. Just a minute. Professors Dragonas and Frangutaki, our student is saying that as we name the minority here Greek Orthodox minority, why don't you name your minority there Turkish Muslim minority or Muslim Turkish minority rather than...
My second question is...
may I finish? That's the first question, and I did not get your second question.
Second question is, why Greek government just applying this Greek language education, they are developing, they are making a program about this, but why they don't do about Turkish? Why don't they allow Turkish government to help this Turkish language development things? They don't allow to books or other things. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, please.
I think that you're touching upon a very complex problem. There are two ways that education can be offered for the Muslim minority children. The one is through the minority schools that are a legal right safeguarded by the Lausanne Treaty, and the other one is the state schools. Minority schools are not good schools. In what sense? They are bilingual schools, but at the same time, there are two parallel monolingual schools. So in that sense, minority schools are failing. They are failing because there is no notion of a up-to-date discussion on what bilingual education is. If one was going to change completely those schools, to change them around, and turn them into proper bilingual schools, that would be a very positive and optimistic development. This is very difficult to do because the minority schools here in Istanbul for room children and the minority schools in Thrace, they're closely tied together through the principle of reciprocity. So it is a huge political issue of how one could dismantle minority schools and turn them around into proper bilingual schools. So in that sense, creating a preschool, a kindergarten, and replicating the minority school formula, to my understanding, would be like multiplying again the problem of a successful academic institution. I fully agree with you that children in kindergarten should be able to promote, should be able to have access to a bilingual environment. This is not the case, and this is something that the Greek government should decide. This has nothing to do with us. I mean, we are only implementing a project that its focus is the learning of Greek language. We are not here, you know, we are not making state decisions of what should be done. We are only applying a project in Greek, and the reason we're applying a project on learning of Greek language is that it's very important for a minority to master the language of the country that it's living in. Because if they do not master this language, then immediately they are second-class citizens who do not have a voice, who cannot claim anything, who cannot empower themselves. So for us, this is an empowerment. Students, if they don't attend a minority school, then they attend a state school. The state school, hopefully, there's a very slim indication, would include aspects of respect of students' identity, in the sense that 7 years ago, there was a law that introduced the pilot learning of Turkish in the state school, in the state secondary school. This was a measure that was, to our opinion, a very positive measure, so that students could have the ability to learn Turkish as an optional course, and also Christian, Greek-speaking students could attend those courses, which would be very important.
Thank you.
This measure did not really develop, and the reason it did not develop is that neither majority nor minority were very keen to support it. The same thing now happens with religion. Minority students that attend the state school at the religious classes, they do not attend, obviously, the Orthodox religion. They're out in the yard playing. So now there's a new law that says that we can introduce the teaching of the Quran in the state school, which would be important for students that would want to learn, to follow a religious class. So these are very major issues that have to do with how one would want and would see education developing. There are very many political problems attached to it. They're not only educational. And of course, the minorities need to attach on the minority school, to cling onto the minority school, is very much keyed to the problem I described in my introduction with Wagner's illiteracy of oppression and illiteracy of resistance. There is a huge battle going on of majorities in general oppressing and minorities in general resisting. So in that sense, it's a very complex issue that needs an opening up of both sides, of both the majority and the minority side, and of course of administrators and policymakers on both sides, and in both countries, because one should go back and think what the Treaty of Lausanne, which is a 90 years old treaty, talks about education in a very new context. And Greece has voted for the, what's the name of it in English? It's the protection of minorities. It's a European measure of protection of minorities. Greece has voted that. Turkey has not at all. But Greece has voted it, but has not amended it.
Not yet amended.
Yet amended it. So if one would think of protection of minorities through a different legal aspect, maybe this complex knot can gradually try to be untied.
Thank you. One more question, and then we will have to adjourn. Yes, Sunibe. May we have the microphone, please?
I will say, my question is, what's the possibility of realizing your project? Can you explain in this way? Because I'm someone who goes to Western Trace several times for the last 15 years, 4 or 5 times a year. It's almost too much, but I stay there 2 or 3 days, something like very short visits. So we have a big problem of preschool education there. It is, you know, it's compulsory, the preschool education is compulsory there from the Hayalades Ochto? Yeah, for
2007.
Yeah, for 5 years or 7 years, something like this. But this last year, in 8 months ago, let's say, or 6 months ago, in the October, we had the big trouble where the Turkish minority there were asking for the bilingual education in the kindergartens. But the government resisted against this and the monolingual, the curriculum. So think about 5 or 6 years kids who are taking preschool education. The class is full of Turkish people, Turkish kids, but the teacher is Greek and we have this big problem making cross sign, and the kids are imitating this, and we had big troubles.
No, cross they don't make anymore.
Yeah, no, it's because I know this because it's very normal. I mean, I do not criticize.
Cross they don't.
Sorry?
Cross they don't make. They don't
okay,
really
but
make cross.
It is said if they don't do it, it's not so important because the citizens, the minority consider they do, because they say, oh, my kid went to do kindergarten and began to do this sign and so on there. They consider this as a problem. I don't know if this is real or not. They are annoying.
It is paradigmatic. It
Yes,
may have happened once and people sort of repeat it. But that's beyond the issue. The issue is a different one.
But think about a 6-year child who is learning Greek, only Greek, and the government. I will say we can't now talk about one single policy among the Turks of Greece, because the policies changed in 1974 because of this Cyprus problems, and it is a little bit changed because of European Union, and the bad time, the worst time was between the Cyprus problem and the European participation Greece to the European unity. And between them, we had big troubles at the houses, even the rain coming inside the house in the Western Trust. They can't do anything. They can't repair their house because they can't move. And we had also some villages. We are very close to Bulgarian frontier. Nobody could enter there. Even you are Greek, you can't enter. You have to have own visa.
When?
During this communist period.
But not now.
Not now. It's changed now. Before, yes, it was forbidden for only the citizens of this village could go there, not the other people. It was forbidden because this is a problem of Cold War, I know. But the problem is now we have the preschool education in Greece, and it is very bad. What's your solution? And my main question is, what is the chance of adaptation your project? Because in Greece I have some friends, some even in the parliament. You have been in PASOK, Ahmet Hacı Osman and these people. Even the Greek Orthodox people who are very good with the Turks, no problem, but there is one single Cold War state policy. We can't go behind this, because there are some good Orthodox people who are friends of us, and we are talking, but At that point, there is a state who says, no, you stop here, there is no chance, and so on and so forth. Thank you. So what is the chance of, you get my question? Okay.
Yes, Anna Frangutaki will answer your question.
Actually, my question was, okay, Anna will answer, okay, no problem.
You asked the question, what are the chances? And
Yes,
so
yes,
she's
yes.
going to
So
respond
it's,
to that. Yes. Yeah,
application.
what are the chances of having a bilingual preschool education you're talking? And she will answer that question.
Chances in the sense of politics, I will say, because you can have a good
Look,
theory
the
and you
problem-
cannot adapt it.
Okay.
So,
As you saw in the film, we respect and we consider also educationally right. A child of only 5 cannot get into a school without understanding or having somebody to be spoken to its own maternal language. We need that. The whole problem makes this very difficult. Is the reciprocity principle, because it had, to our opinion, had suffered the minorities here and in Greece, this reciprocity, because every time a government was doing something negative to, let's say, the minority here, the Greek government was answering by oppressing the Muslim minority in its territories. So the problem of the preschool is that the Greek state obviously does not want to extend the minority status to further than it is protected by the Lausanne Treaty. And the Lausanne Treaty talks, after all, only about primary schools, not even secondary. Preschool was unknown at these times. Yes, I know the reason. So I think and we hope that we have to go further in a European, let's say, orientation of the new principles of protecting the right to be protected as a minority everywhere, the right to its maternal language and culture, and we hope that the road to a full and harmonic integration of the people without losing anything of their parents' and grandparents' characteristics linguistically, culturally, but be fully integrated and speak perfect Greek. We have now Turkish-speaking youth that was with us when they were 7 or 8 in the centers, and now they are students or they finished a Greek university, so they are perfect bilinguals. And if you put them in a small village there, they become symbols and examples. So this is what we hope. We hope a new way that goes beyond the Lausanne Treaty, which is very old, almost 100 years now have passed, 1923. And I would like to say only one word, because everybody is tired, to your doubts. You're a young person, I understand you, and I respect very much these doubts. We are presenting our work, so we say we're good people and what we did is good. Why you have to believe us on our word? The information I can give you is that we both talked, Montalia talked about the suspicion we were met when we arrived there. Suspicion by majority and very much minority. By the minority press, the Turkish-speaking press in our country, we were called wolves with a
sheepskin.
A sheep, how do you call it?
Sheepskin.
Yes, a sheepskin. All these years, we dealt with mistrust, we understood it. And today we are really happy and proud that we have the trust of the mothers. The parents trust us completely today. That's an answer.
May I ask you that, connecting to this show? In Shahin, I talked about with my friends. In Shahin, I heard the same issue about crossing themselves, this child. In kindergarten, after kindergarten, at breakfast, in their home, before the breakfast, some children started to crossing themselves. This is, I think this is normal, but the proof.
Look. This thing with the cross. The problem in Greece, I really believe me, it's not the Muslim religion of our minority. It's its ethnic identity. Yes, the problem is not the religion. We are not a tolerant country religiously. We are no. But the religion is respected in Thrace. There are mosques, as you say, people can pray, and if, in order to be repeated like this, someone must have seen it once. But I assure you that the teachers, even the most, let's say, less progressive, less tolerant to the differences in the society, they never tried to make violence on a child, to make it change religiously. Lose it.
Okay, I will have
this
to
is
ask.
not the problem.
Excuse me. I will have to ask you to stop asking questions at the moment. We're very late. This room. Excuse me. This room. Just a minute. Excuse me. I have to close the session. Would you please allow me to excuse me. Excuse me. I have to close the session.
We can discuss it.
We can discuss it after.
Better to discuss because I have been in Rhodos. You say it is they pressurize the families to take care of all papers are like closed. Not closed officially. They say
excuse me. Excuse me. I have to intervene here.
We are not. Yeah, sure.
Just a minute, Talia. I have to intervene here. My colleagues are not politicians. My colleagues here are social scientists who were involved in an action research for 10 years. 15 years. And they shared with us the process and the changes through this action research. They are not representing the Greek government as we're not representing the Turkish government. So we discussed the research, the findings, and the social change that we observed. Of course, no social change meets ideal levels, but it is a process, and through the process, we hope that we will see multicultural societies in which diversity will be put in a frame of increasing the richness of the society, and diversity will be part of the mosaic and the richness that culture shares. This is our hope as social scientists, and our research is only data that is produced by the methodology that was used to answer some questions. And this is what we witnessed here. I have written here certain notes, and I would like to share them with you as a final note to the completion of this very, very interesting conference and sharing. We hope as social scientists that a person's choices of what kind of opportunities are available to the person, or what kind of life that person is allowed to lead, will not be at the mercy of which geography they are born into, which religion they are born into, what kind of a government they are led by, but they will be within the frame of the acceptance of human dignity for all living beings on this planet, and not only the humans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.